My name is Kevin Grossnicklaus. Thanks to everyone for coming out. Thanks to the AV guy and the cool technology we get here in the theater. Hopefully you're all here to hear me talk about Claude Code. I say that up front because I've had people be in the wrong session and I've been in the wrong place at times. So we got 45 minutes and a lot to cover. I'm Kevin. My team put that nice little slide. Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, originally from Nebraska, lived in St. Louis. Been doing this a long time, coding in general, not Claude Code, but I do it every day, constantly. It's a big part of my life, my company's life. I work at a company called ArchitectNow, not selling you on anything, but setting the stage for the stories and the usage I'm going to talk about later. We're about 30 people. Everyone at the company has Claude Max plans. We're a software development shop. Everyone's on agile development teams doing projects for people and using this every single day. I say we're fully remote here. We have one guy in Brazil, so shout out to Nacho. How many people here, big theater, a lot of people, how many people use Claude Code today? So, decent amount. So for the rest of you, or some of you, this might be old hat. It's a deck that I'm gonna give away at the end of this. I'll show you where you can go get it. I will bounce back and forth between some samples. I won't do a lot live in Claude today. They told me I would not have any internet, so to plan more on a demo discussion and not live coding, so please expect that. Claude Code, and everything today I'm going to talk about also works in GitHub Copilot CLI, so most of the concepts are identical across both. Claude Code is a command line tool from Anthropic. You can run it in any terminal, any IDE that has it. I'm going to show you a number here. It is not free. That comes up a lot. You do have to subscribe. You have to have an Anthropic authenticated plan, whether your company provides that or you pay for that personally. We'll talk about pricing here in a little bit. I guess I think I have it down here at the bottom. Everyone at my company gets the $200 a month plan, just as an FYI. The difference in the pricing tiers is how much you can use. They track tokens. So, and my marketing team runs out of tokens a lot. Certain people run out of tokens, but for $200 a month, functionally no developer ever runs out. It's unlimited usage. It just depends on what you're doing. You get to use Opus 4.5 or 4.6 and 4.7. It's only 4.7 now. You get to use all their models. Like I said, this fundamentally is the same thing as GitHub Copilot CLI. Microsoft is chasing Anthropic pretty big in this environment, stealing all their ideas, so both tools do the same. Well, Microsoft admits it heavily. You run GitHub Copilot CLI and it says, hey, you have Claude Code installed, do you want me just to move all your stuff over? So it's kind of like when Edge came out, they did the same to Chrome. Hey, we noticed you're using a competitor's browser, should we just pull in all your settings? Very easy to run. I won't spend too much time on how to get it up, or how to load it, how to install it. But there is a single command line. You can go to their website. If you don't have this installed already, it's an NPM package. Simply type npm install it globally on your machine. And then you can simply, in any folder that you happen to be in a terminal, type Claude. I put it here with the --Chrome. That adds a Chrome MCP server. We'll talk about MCP servers in a little bit. But that means that your installation of Claude, or the instance that's running, when you type that, can open your browser and perform actions on your behalf in your browser. So it's kind of a handy thing to do if you're testing or you want to do something there's no native MCP server for. First thing you would likely have to do is type /login once it runs, and that will open a browser and you have to log into your Anthropic account. So whatever plan that you're paying for, you're required to log in first, or it's going to tell you I can't do anything and you have to authenticate first. So it's very easy to install, no magic there. Works on Linux, Windows, Mac, anything you want. And I'm not going to belabor all the different commands in this. I want to show how we use it and get into spec kit, but you can type /init the first time you're in a folder. You don't have to. What /init does, it will create a Claude markdown file, claude.md. That is a file. You can put that file at the root of your repo or any other folder. They'll bubble up. And then think of that as your system prompt for this project. There's no specific format for it, it's just Markdown. So you can put in there whatever you want. Powerful tip from me, don't make that too big because that system prompt goes with every message you send up to the LLM. So if it's 100K file in that Claude MD, you're going to burn through your tokens and your context very fast. What we do is we optimize that pretty well, and we do have a lot of documentation, and we treat that Claude Markdown file as kind of the table of contents. So we'll have a section in there that says, if you're working on the front end, reference this document. If you're working on the database layer, reference this document. So think of it like having, this is the instructions you give your junior developer or your senior, your 300 level IQ developer that doesn't know anything about your project. When they start working with you, you hand them that ClaudeMD file. You say, this is the basics of what we're working on. You don't really have to do the /permissions. We'll get into tools. This allows you to authorize or block any command line or any local tools that you either want to grant access to Claude or you want to deny access to Claude. If you don't type that /permissions, it's going to ask you all the time, do you want me to have access to run Git or whatever the command it might try to run locally on your hard drive? And then you can say yes, or you can say yes forever, and it will add it automatically then to the permissions, which is how I do it. When you run Claude the first time, it's going to use their newest model. Right now that's Opus 4.7. You can type /model and switch between that and a few others. Sonnet, new version of Sonnet, and Haiku, I believe, is in there currently. That changes as new ones come out. But typically, it depends on your plan. You pay more. The plan eats more tokens for the higher end models like Opus. If you're paying for the cheaper plan and want to get more bang for your buck, don't use Opus. Go back and use Sonnet and use it as much as you can because you'll get more for your $20 payment. If you have a max plan, use the nicer model. Some of my team does that quite a bit. They bounce back and forth. They use the expensive models to do more intensive tasks, and then they go to cheaper models. This is that ClaudeMD file. No magic here other than don't make it too big, and ultimately be smart about where your documentation goes. I'm going to show you some of these later. So just some examples of what I have, so I won't stay in PowerPoint the whole time. I'm going to pop over and show you some code, but you can actually put these files in any folder in your repo, and where you're at and where you run Claude, it'll read it all the way to the top. We don't generally do that a lot. We just have one big one, or one that references other files. So before I jump over and show you a little bit, what is Claude Code? So it's a command line tool. I talked about that. You can type these / commands in. It does all this fancy stuff. But ultimately, the power isn't that it's just AI. The power is that it's AI that runs commands on your local hard drive and can control things like your desktop, open a browser. It can really do everything. So I have Azure. We're a Microsoft partner at ArchitectNow. I do a ton in Azure. We're a managed services provider, Cloud CSP, for reselling Azure, so we manage a lot of instances. I use the Azure command line interface, and Claude helps me significantly do some pretty advanced tasks that aren't even related to coding. You can use Claude Code for anything. My marketing team uses it, my sales guys use it. They actually use Claude Code in a terminal to perform a lot of their day-to-day work. So it isn't specific to coding, although we're going to talk about that mostly today. But with Azure CLI, I log in, I go AZ login, and I authenticate as myself, so it has access to the tenants and subscriptions that I do, and then I can just type, and it knows all of the command line interfaces for all of the Azure packages, and it can run them. And it does that for Git. I've actually gotten stupider at using Git. I would consider myself a good mid-level Git person. I work with some very advanced experts, and I get myself wrapped around, conflicts and all kinds of stuff periodically I have to ask for help for. I don't do that anymore. They even notice that I ask them for help less now because Claude understands what I want it to do. I don't have to know all the Git commands. I say, commit this to this branch, merge here. I just write it out like I would tell somebody sitting next to me. It knows all the Git commands, and it does everything. It can roll back, it can version, it can tag, it can do everything you can do from any of these tools. It can do. It understands every language. It understands PowerShell. I'm giving a PowerShell talk next week, and that's not my expertise, but it's helped me put together a pretty cool PowerShell. I'm an assistant to an expert giving a talk, but it's helped me quite a bit there as well. So we have come back to this ClaudeMD and these tools. Most of my team writes the same, like many of you likely have the same architectures across many projects. It's rarely do you find someone that just jumps between Ruby projects and .NET, and we build things pretty much the same way. So we copy a lot of this assets from project to project, ClaudeMD being one, our permissions files. We use the same command line tools from project to project for the most part. How do you use it? This is a big difference in like a lot of people. If you're a React developer, everybody does React differently. That's a foundation you build on. It's easy enough to use Claude Code. You can paste in images, you can give it files, you can just paste in a Word doc. I do a lot of my coding today in Word, and I don't even say that jokingly. I actually write out all my specs in Word and paste them in. I don't even write them anymore, I say them, which we'll get to later. But you can type paragraphs of text. I'm on a Mac. This is my iTerm. I use a tool called iTerm 2. It just replaces the bash shell on a Mac, but you can use any terminal you want. I use this one. It's got tabs, and you can lay it out. Each of these little areas is its own terminal. It's just a window layout exercise of this tool, so I keep multiple instances of Claude running at once. It also has tabs up here. So my day-to-day coding, just me personally, I don't open an IDE. I've got projects that I've built, debugged, tested, deployed to production that have never been opened in a development environment. I can do everything outside of an IDE. It's the craziest thing. In my youth, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I wrote my first line of code in, I think, 86, maybe 85, on an old Apple back in my home state of Nebraska. As my career progressed, like a lot of you, I thought that the future of software development is going to be, WYSIWYG, graphical interfaces, moving buttons and all of that. And who knew we'd be working this much in a terminal in 2026? It seems like, but who knew AI would be doing so much of it? But I keep many instances of these open. I get a little ADD with it where I'm working on one project in one tab, and I got Claude performing some functions, switch to another tab to another project. Each of these top level tabs in my world is something different. I just keep them all going simultaneously and working simultaneously. I get weird. Before I go to bed at night, I feel more productive if I have Claude doing something overnight. So I will open up my laptop and say, hey, go write more unit tests or whatever, something long running. I'll go to bed, get up in the morning, and it'll be done. So when I get on a plane, I can do this from my phone. My wife laughs at me. We were flying somewhere a while back, and I would go to sleep for a bit, wake up, type something, hit enter, go to sleep. She's like, what are you doing that you just keep nodding off and then you type a little bit? I'm like, I'm just letting Claude run, and I have to give it the next command. So it works everywhere. I'm showing you IDEs. I will come back to that. It also works in Claude Desktop. So I was in a console, and that console could be in Visual Studio Code or Writer, whatever tool you use, Visual Studio. But you can also run full Claude Code in their desktop app. Same login, it uses the same tokens, it's your same account, but it's their current UI as this code up here. When you run it here, it actually does not run locally on and it works on your phones and tablets as well, so it runs on my iPad and my phone. This does not run your command line tools locally. Instead, what it does is they spin up a small Linux machine in the cloud, clones your repo, and then it runs in the instance of that Linux machine. Lots of my developers do that as well. So they will run some instances of Claude like this, just in a terminal. It's running using your local resources, your local memory. They will also have we set up a lot of our developers big Linux virtual desktops or virtual machines in the cloud, and then we SSH the console over so they can run it and have a stable machine they can load all their stuff on in the cloud. And every time they open Claude Code, whether it's desktop, phone, or shell, they're actually terminaling into that machine, and all the execution is running on that machine. So you'll see that. I don't have that demo set up here, but everything you're seeing here today is ran right here. So lots of different places. So in my airplane example, I can just get an iPad out. I don't have to carry around a big laptop. You can also run it remote. There's a command that I can run if I just type, /remote control. These slash commands are the extensions. You can load plugins, and they install these slash commands that you can write your own slash commands. We do that quite a bit, but remote control is a relatively new one. If I type remote control, it generates me a URL in the cloud. I can leave my laptop sitting at home, and I can go somewhere with my iPad or my phone, and I can open up that URL, and it allows me to run commands, and it runs them locally on my laptop. So I'll do that quite a bit as well. I'll leave my laptop at home so I don't have to carry it. It's on a network. I have a tunnel. It's basically routing through Claude.ai, their website, so I don't even need to open any ports. And no matter where I am, I can execute all my stuff and keep things running. And you can name these commands too if you wanted. You could give it a name as a second parameter, so I could say this is project A and this is project B. So when I'm remote controlling externally, I can remember what I called it and what folder and what project I'm working on. Some simple things, and I have a team of 25 developers that work for me, and getting them to adopt Claude to some has been extremely easy. Some it's been a bigger mind shift in getting them to lean more on this. Telling people that you hired to code full time that you don't want them to code at all is a strange thing, but we're there. Documentation, testing are no-brainers anymore. It's very easy to take an app. We've got an app we're converting a COBOL app from an AS400 mainframe for the city of St. Louis. The people that are working there were the people that wrote the COBOL app in the late 80s. So it's the same people that have been working on this app in 2026, and we're moving it all to this modern platform. But my team, a bunch of people on my team are 23, 24, 25 years old, and they find it fascinating. They get to look at COBOL every day. So they'll send me snippets and say, have you ever seen this? I'm like, I did, actually. But they use Claude. They documented that COBOL app. They basically got the source code of this massive 40-year-old app, and Claude helped pull out, as we've migrated it. Claude did not migrate it. We did the migration separately. But when you do that, you have to figure out the intricacies of these business rules that somebody added, this one line to account for one thing. And Claude has been invaluable at documenting that old app. No documentation existed for that app. It does now. Any of our apps, we have great documentation, Markdown. I'll show some of that. We do a lot of, we're a consulting firm at our core, so people come to us and say, I got this old app, can you help maintain it or help migrate it or something? We're given other people's projects a lot in different platforms. We had a customer a couple months ago give us a PHP app. We know enough PHP to be dangerous, but that's not our expertise. One of my guys said, did they care if it's PHP? I said, no. He's like, can I convert it all to .NET? I said, yeah, and about 40 minutes later, he was done. It wasn't a big app, but it was 20, 30 screens, database, PostgreSQL. He wrote some unit tests. He wrote some playwright tests with Claude so he could test the new and the old, and wrote a test harness that ran them both and made sure, and then he just had it converted into a new folder, into .NET, and ran his tests and confirmed everything, documented it, and customer was like, you're maintaining it, you write it whatever you want. So. Documentation and testing, I bring up testing. Very easy to write unit tests. That's something that most people don't do enough of. Our projects vary. I'm very proud we have lots of unit tests. Other times, like a lot of people, it gets lost in the mud. People are like, I don't want to spend the time and effort to write tests and maintain them. That is trivial now. You can go into any folder, find a project, whatever language, just say, I want, write unit tests. I have, just this one project here. I left this open. This project has 1,077 tests. Just in this last feature, looking up here, it added 121 new ones. It writes my integration tests, so I have Docker open. I do a lot of Cosmos, MongoDB, a lot of Azure stuff, Azure Blob Storage, SignalR. There's Docker containers that emulate all of this stuff, and it writes all my tests against those Docker containers and runs them as part of my DevOps package. I hand wrote 0 of those 1,077 tests. I've reviewed a lot of them. I looked at them. I found places where there was a bug that needed more testing, so I gave it guidance on the places to add more tests and how to test and what to test, but I didn't hand write a single thing. Part of my Claude MD file says every time I commit a new feature to go ahead and make sure there's unit tests. It writes unit tests first. It follows the process that we wish we as humans had time to do and budget to do. This is, we do, it gets really crazy anymore, some of the stuff that I'm able to do. I get a crash, I get a stack trace, I'm testing something and something doesn't work, and out comes, exception and all the exception details. A lot of times I don't even tell Claude what I was doing. I just copy that to the clipboard, paste it, hit enter. Claude looks at it and says, oh, it's this file, it's this thing, it fixes it, it's done. So sometimes I will say, hey, just for some context, I was on this screen doing this thing, here's the stack trace, and it does it. But the cycle to get fixable code is much faster. Even better, I do a lot of logging to App Insights. And I mentioned earlier, I have Azure CLI on my desktop. So if it crashes in production, I just say, hey, a user reported something yesterday around 2:30, can you go to App Insights, download the stack trace, and just fix the bug? And it does it. I don't even tell it what user or what bug. It just searches 2:30 yesterday. I'll do a quick search using Azure CLI, pull down all the exception log from the cloud, and fix the issue, which is crazy. Biggest thing, I wish I had more time in this talk. I wish I could give a talk just on this, but we don't use Claude Code vanilla out of the box Claude Code. So everyone's like, oh, your team uses Claude Code and you must be vibe coding everything or whatever you think that term means, right? We actually use a tool on top of Claude Code called, it's a framework from GitHub called SpecKit. It enforces spec-driven development. So I mentioned earlier, I do all my coding in Microsoft Word. That is very true. I go into Microsoft Word, I write out a spec. This is what my job has become. My job is not semicolons and curly braces and coding C#. I now, and all my developers are pivoting to this as well. They don't sit in Visual Studio 8 hours a day coding, manual features. Instead, they move up the stack a ways. The needle shifted them into designers, architects. They're gathering requirements with the business analysts. They're still putting their technology spin on it and what libraries, but we install this tool for everybody, and it's pretty easy to find. It's just an open source repo, single command, it installs it. When you install it, you tell it you're working in Claude. This SpecKit also works in Codex, GitHub, Copilot CLI. It works on all the Agentic platforms, but Claude Code being one. But what this tool does is it enforces a process. So that process is 5 steps. In there, it adds all kinds of scripts to your Claude Code. I can come in here and I can type speckit.specify.plan. It extends Claude Code to put these commands in there for you. So what you do is you start with the first one, speckit.specify. I give it a name of a feature branch and I give it the spec. I paste it in. I type that over in Microsoft Word. It could be 1 page, it could be a paragraph, it could be 20 pages. We'll talk about the size. I paste that in, but I give it the name of the feature I'm working on. It creates a feature branch in Git, and then it takes the spec I give it and writes a formal specification document. I do this a lot. This is Writer. It puts it in a specs folder. In this project, I have 50 or 60 of them, but it creates a spec that looks nice. It's the standard user story, a user shall. It takes my brain dump in whatever format. I'm using Word and I'm just rattling off what I want this thing to be. I paste it into this thing, run that script. It writes a formal specification document. Is it perfect? It's only going to be as good as whatever I pasted in. So the next step is I type speckit.clarify. It then evaluates the spec and asks me clarifying questions. It says, hey, you told me this, I need to clarify what's the performance requirements. So then I go back and forth with AI answering a lot of questions. And this is all inside of Claude Code, and it's using AI, it's using whatever model I'm using, but it goes back and forth and it's really insightful to me, the things I forget to tell it, but I clarify. While I clarify, it keeps updating the spec after all my answers, so it just gets better and better and better. Then I get to the plan stage. This is where I spend most of my time. I type plan. Only one you actually pass any parameters into is the first one, clarify. The rest of them, you just run the command with no parameters. Plan evaluates the spec and comes up with a full technical implementation plan. It looks at my project, my structure, my best practices, figures out what it should write, writes a full plan document with architectural diagrams, all the files it's going to create, the class names. It gives me data models, all the enums. This is my time is spent today, not coding, but reviewing that plan and giving it my feedback. Once the plan is set, I move on to tasks. It basically looks at the plan, as you'd expect, puts together a task list of how it's going to do it in phases. Then I type speckit implement and just turn it loose. I could say implement, phase 1, and then I want to test or implement all of it if I want to do that. I can just, like having a junior developer following a process that's better than me just vibe coding. I follow this process for about everything. Just looking at my writer here, you will notice I've got it numbered these. A bunch of them are 001. Not sure why. There was a bug in the early spec kit where it wouldn't realize there was already an 001, but I didn't really care. But these are all the names of the features. It created a branch. It followed a process. I then get implement done. I run it. I test it. I use it. I give feedback. I go back and forth with it. I fix it. Still in Claude Code. Then when I'm done, I tell it to complete this feature. It merges into main, deletes the feature branch. All of these files stay versioned and committed into my repo. So they are the history of this project. So I can see on this particular thing, the specs folder has lots. Some of these are smaller, some are bigger. Some are things like initial setup. This is the plan for initial setup. Here's my folder structure. One thing that I didn't show here that's related to SpecKit is there is a memory folder here with a constitution. SpecKit has a single constitution per project. What is a constitution? It is the must-have things that are non-negotiable. It's your coding standards, it's your best practices. My team prides themselves on having a really good constitution file. Every feature, as it's being, at any point in the process, the plan, the actual specifies command is reading that constitution and making sure that all the decisions it makes follows that. This isn't code, it's just a markdown file. Mine gets, and this particular one, gets into how my models work, my folder structure. It won't deviate from this. So I've told it, some of this, you don't have to handwrite this. When we start a new project, say we're given a project and we want to use Claude Code and SpecKit, we tell Claude Code, hey, we're going to use SpecKit for new features moving forward. Can you analyze the structure of this app and help me write the constitution file so that we don't deviate and you do things the same way all the time? So this file evolves, it grows. Down here it gets into, this one's pretty big, it gets into my governance, how I run tests, test coverage goals, the tech stack. I'm using XUnit, mock, fluent assertions for testing. So it doesn't, not that it always would just make bad decisions. Typically, even if you don't use SpecKit, Claude Code's very smart. It's looking at your project saying, hey, I notice you already have unit tests and they already use this framework. It's not going to recommend a new one. But the constitution and the SpecKit process, the more you do it, the better you get at it and the faster you can go, right? So when I'm writing a project, I'm starting with similar stuff, similar frameworks. It knows how I code. It knows how I like things laid out. Tip on Claude Code. As I'm writing specs, I just paste in URLs to other GitHub repos. I say, I want to use this library. I want you to set your, on initial setup, this other project that I worked on 3 weeks ago has the exact structure I like. Copy everything over from that. Set yourself up to be identical. Use the same frameworks, use the same NuGet packages, pull the constitution for SpecKit, just pull everything over from there. So you have a constitution with SpecKit, you have a Claude MD in just regular Claude Code. They both kind of go together. I keep them up to speed, or I keep them in sync. I say less typing. I'll quickly jump ahead. I do a lot of my work in my basement. I have a basement bar and I sit at that bar. It's kind of my stand-up desk because it's bar height, so I either sit on a bar stool and I'll keep a TV on periodically watching YouTube videos, and a lot of times it's like something like this, Claude Code, these influencers out there showing you how they use these tools, and sometimes it's all BS and you can tell they've never coded. Other times I learned something. One guy the other day, or a couple months ago, was using a tool called WhisperFlow. Anyone here used WhisperFlow? My team loves this tool. We're addicted to it. It's an AI-driven speech-to-text tool. That's all it is, much like your phone. It's just better than the one built into your OS or your phone. It runs everything through AI before it, and so it'll do bullet points, it'll do formatting, it does some crazy stuff. So my team and myself spend more time speaking our prompts in our specs than we do typing them. My wife finds it funny. She thinks I'm on meetings all the time. She's like, you were in a lot of meetings today. And I'm like, I had no meetings. She's like, I heard you talking down there. I'm like, that's just me talking to myself. Yeah, but we type in, a lot of stuff like this, I didn't type. I just hold the key down and talk, and then I let go and it fills it in. So one of my team had, I think, 100,000 words last month. They give you a stat. Every month you get an email that says, you've used WhisperFlow this much. And it does it on any tool. It's on my phone, but it'll do my slash commands in anything. So I keep all my original specs. I don't know why. I keep all my Word docs. Like this is actually a spec. No fancy formatting. This is me doing a brain dump that then got pasted into SpecKit and then got built. And I just keep doing this over and over and over again. When to use SpecKit? I get asked this a lot, so I wanted to address it, so I put this slide in here. I don't use SpecKit for everything. Sometimes I just weigh, do I want to go through that 5-step process? If it's a big feature, a bunch of screens, there's some input from other people, yes, I follow that process specifically. Other times, if it's just a paragraph like this down here, Evaluate all code in this repo, update my docs folder as markdown, update readme to current state, refresh CloudMD and SpecKit constitution, use Mermaid for diagrams. Just that one line pasted into Claude Code in a project will do a massive amount of work for you. Do I need to go through the whole spec-driven development process to type that one line in? No, I just type it into Claude Code and it happens. I keep, in all of our projects anymore, we have standardized on a /docs folder, and everything sits in this docs folder. So it's got my architectural diagram. Let me find the actual one with the diagram. It generated all this off that one, maybe 2 or 3 sentence line. It just scans my whole project. So one of the things I do before I go to bed, if I've been working on a bunch of new stuff, I will come in here and say, look at the current, my team calls it as-built documentation. So this documentation is current state of the code base documented. So if a bunch of people are committing features, one of us will run that command and have it go through every doc and make sure that it is current with what the code is and keep itself current, which is a godsend to a lot of our projects. We're a consulting company, so people jump between projects. You might get a new person on your team. Well, they have to get up to speed. That's always difficult. It's been difficult. Much easier now that we have things like, here's a project I did in MCP server for Dataverse. This is a real project I deployed a couple months ago now, I guess. Look at this README file. All of this was generated. I said, just look. I did the whole project, and as the final step, I said, write full documentation on yourself. I want the README file. It wrote, samples, how to install, MCP server lists, what some sample prompts would be, how to use it. All of this was done in 3 minutes, 4 minutes maybe. And it was all, I did not design this README. I put no work into it other than say, now that I'm done with this project, make this README cool enough I can give to the next developer. And it did. And I believe, I don't know if this one does or not, in addition to the README, this file has docs. It only has one, but it's a pretty simple app. This is in TypeScript. I haven't written TypeScript by hand in years. Used to be a big Angular developer, but we kind of pivoted a lot to Blazor lately. My projects have been Blazor. So back to this slide, there's no hard and fast rule. We love SpecKit, the team thinks about it, they do their estimates. It's changing how we write software. Our team is focused on these specs and that process less than coding. What goes into our user stories and Azure DevOps and other tools, Jira, if the client's using them, are those specs. Our business analysts and our product owners are writing the specs in a way that they flow through. It's changing our whole process. I mentioned this a week or so ago at a similar talk like this. People laughed, you may laugh, but we've been conditioned to follow an agile development process, right? We do 2-week sprints, we have stand-ups, we have ceremonies. Developers are agile today, right? There was a pivot into that, and now it just is the norm. Everyone uses Git, everyone follows an agile process to some degree. We have some projects we're going back to waterfall. Never thought I would say that. It feels blasphemous. But with AI, a waterfall approach is a little easier to comprehend. You have more context up front. So I started a project, a product we're building a month or two ago. I spent a whole week, I got up early on a Saturday, had nothing going on that weekend. I just started writing specs. And I was having it write specs. I had it evaluate 20 competitors. I had it go to every competitor's website, give me feature matrices. Then I just started spec writing. I ran out of tokens in my Claude Max plan because words take more tokens than code. I ended up with like 90 spec files all built before a line of code got started. And then I had it give me a dev plan, what order to build it in. So when I started on feature 1 actually building, it had all this context for the entire project. It knew end state, it knew all the integrations. I wrote a web app, a mobile app, an API, an MCP server. It had all of this planned, so up front it built the foundation that supported it all, which we like to think we do even in an agile world. We know what the end state is, we just build it in 2-week chunks. Here we can define, generally what you don't do in agile is write specs for 100% of the features before you start writing code. Instead, you just do enough to curate a backlog and get through 2 weeks, and curate a backlog and get through 2 weeks. Here, you can go a bit differently. I mean, we're asking ourselves at ArchitectNow, big question as our management team. If we were to start the company over today as a technology services shop, how would we do it differently? given access to all this infrastructure, all these tools? How would we, what tools would we use? Do they make sense? MCP servers, I just showed you one I built. These are great. Basically, it's extending your AI to give you access to other tools. We use out of the box, GitHub, Azure DevOps, Figma. We use Figma for a lot of our wireframing. It reads and writes our Figma diagrams and generates our UI from that, pixel perfect UI from Figma. We use Notion. We switched from Loop to Notion. All of our unstructured content on a project goes into Notion pages and workspaces, and AI just reads that. So if I've got documentation that means something to Claude Code, we just point that project out. Hey, all the history of this client, the work we've done for them, other projects, we keep in Notion. It pulls all of that down and uses it as making decisions, which is crazy. It does my database migrations. It analyzes my database. I changed to C# code the other day, and it said, hey, the C# code is a model used in Entity Framework. Do you want me to check the database to make sure? I added a constraint. So it actually went out while I was watching it, Claude Code buzz by, and scanned my database and told me there are 5 rows that have data in it that will break that constraint you just added to C#. It said, do you want me to update that data or change the constraint to allow for that? I said, change the constraint. So I don't even go to SQL Server Management Studio or any dev tools anymore. We write our own MCP servers. That one I showed you was for Dataverse. We use Dynamics as our CRM and our support tool. And now there's an MCP server. It can read and write and get all the structure and write SQL and just hit Dataverse. My marketing team loves it. Overnight, they have all kinds of scheduled tasks and prompts that edit things. Slash commands, you can write your own. You know how easy it is to write your own? You don't write it at all. You just go tell Claude, I want a new slash command that does this thing. Please create it and put it in the right place. Sub-agents. I have sub-agents for code reviews. We have standard code review, PR review documents that we run behind the scenes, and that does, some run locally, some run in the cloud. We don't do as much hooks. Some of our plugins that we just purchase have hooks. The term in Claude is plugins. If I come back here, another big tip, you can just type plugin, see what you've got loaded. I've got code review, front end, JetBrains, the IDE. We're a big JetBrains shop. The whole IDE of JetBrains is its own MCP server. So if you want Claude, you can install the JetBrains or turn it on, and my Claude Code can just open JetBrains and it'll move tabs and it'll click buttons for me and just run the whole IDE. I used to do that, but it ate up a lot of context, and I don't use the IDE much anyway, so it was a waste. But when you install a plugin, it really is all this other stuff bundled. Any scripts, any slash commands. So there's libraries on, at the bottom of this deck, I'll show you, and I'll share it after this talk. We have a bunch of resources, but there's whole ecosystems out there. Other developers have given you plugins to do various things. So big tip is go look through there. Don't reinvent the wheel. Go find a plugin that might do what you want. There's ones for Playwright. There's plugins to really most tools anymore. As we're building tools, we build apps that have APIs, front ends, and MCP servers anymore. MCP server is just becoming the norm on most modern tools. Even our customers that are using us to evaluate products, they're looking for MCP servers access so they can do it. We spend a lot of time extending, wrapping existing APIs in MCP servers. We also, just as an FYI, use CodeRabbit for our big CodeRabbit fan. I don't own them, I don't have equity, but they do a great, they're a service that we embed in our GitHub enterprise, and they do all of our PR reviews. So it doesn't use Claude to do our PR reviews. I talked about this. You can use Claude Code on anything. You can do the remote control. I have multiple instances open simultaneously. You just have to log in to multiple instances, right? I showed you this. Writer, you can have down here. This is just the terminal in Writer. If I go to my Visual Studio Code, it happens to be mounted over here on the right, but they even put a Claude button here. Wherever you run your Claude, you can have multiple tabs. It can be open in 10 tools at once if you want. And again, it's weird, you bounce around a lot, but I think that way, a lot of context switching, but I use this tool, and here I've got Claude, here I've got Claude, here I've got .NET Watch that's just running my app as Claude Codes. It keeps refreshing my browser and recompiling for me. Down here is another terminal. This particular app has payment. It uses Stripe, and Stripe has a local proxy for testing credit card payments. So whatever you need your terminals for, you end up having a bunch of them. And then I break it up by tabs. This one just has .NET Watch and 2 Claudes. All right. I put a slide in here on Whisper Flow. I like that tool. I just hold the key down and I talk and it goes. I don't know if that is updated. If you want this deck, well, first off, this is 45 minutes and a lot to cover. So I didn't, in internet that isn't as good, but please come up after, come find me out there. I'm happy to talk more about this and share more about what I do. ArchitectNow.net/downloads. I will make sure here very shortly this PowerPoint is up there. Yeah, I was going to say, I think that this got updated and that QR code did, but go to ArchitectNow.net/downloads. Might be there now. Happy, I have business cards too if you want a card. Yep, it's right here. Is this deck. I included a lot of links to resources. I mean, it's pretty easy to find. Go on YouTube and just search Claude Code. There are so many channels, and then I'm not saying they're all good. A lot of influencers are trying to get click money off YouTube channels, but it's up there. One final quick story. Unrelated to Claude Code, I just came back from Ireland a week ago, took my family, had a great trip, took the whole family, rented a little farmhouse on the southwest Ireland. We were driving and we got into the philosophical discussion of how AI is changing. Basically, I went to Ireland to rent a farmhouse to get away from AI, and be honest. But we talked about it, and one of my kids said, what industry isn't AI going to touch? You know, who's safe? So we're driving down the road and I see these sheep and I'm like, that guy. That guy isn't going to be touched. He's painting his sheep and he's this Irish farmer, lives in this farmhouse. AI is not going to affect this guy. Next morning, my wife and I are up making pancakes and bacon for the family. Get a knock on the door. It's this old farmer. And it's a true story. This just happened. And he welcomes us. He says, I keep an eye on the place for the Airbnb owners and just wanted to make sure you have everything. And he introduced himself. And I said, no, we're great. And he comes in, has coffee. Great guy. As we're talking, he goes, what do you do for work? I said, well, I'm from the States and I work in technology. And he goes, oh, what do you think of this AI stuff? And then, first he goes, are you a coder? I'm like, yeah, my company codes. He's like, what do you think of this AI? Turns out his son works for Apple as a coder in Cork, as a developer, and has this guy automating most of it, all of his accounting, everything is done with AI. He sat and told me all the things. This random farmer that I told my family wouldn't be affected. He's like, he loves it. He's like, I don't see why everyone's so scared about it. He goes, it's helping me automate so much stuff. And my wife just laughed. She's like, did that guy just come over here and tell you he used AI and you said he wouldn't? So nobody is immune, but I think that agentic development isn't going away. I got some buddies at Microsoft and they claim I got a lot of buddies at Microsoft. One guy the other day said the new currency in benefits packages is going to be tokens. Right? So you're going to, at some point, get a salary. You know, here's your salary, your benefits, your health care, your 401k, and, you know, in your employment contract, it's going to say how many tokens. You get a Claude Max plan or whatever assigned to you. So they're seeing that, and they're actually hiring people with token spend in their benefits package, what they're given, which is a crazy thing, but I guess I can see it. We've not done that, but that's what they're saying out there. With that, I am out of time. I got time for maybe a few questions as I'm tearing down. If you want to come down and ask, like I said, you can download this. I'll give you a card.